Anybody ready for a word today? For those of you who are taking notes, many of you love to take notes, and I thank God for that. I want to quickly, and if you follow me and help me, I promise this time. I promise this time not to keep you long. If you follow me quickly, I want to talk about miracles and responsibility. Is it possible that when God performs a miracle, He includes us in the process?
Amen.
I want to ponder over that, because a lot of people just want God to do something for them, but we don't want to participate in the thing that we want God to do. And so what I want to do is, I want you to take these notes down quickly, if you are taking notes. If not, just follow me. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 11, verse 28 through 30. I'm going to give you 4 different scriptures. Don't be afraid, you won't be here all day. But I want you to look at Matthew 11 and verse number 28 through verse number 30. And then we want to look at John 2, verse 2 through verse number 11. That's John 2, verse number 2 through 11. Now, when I read these, I'm not going to stay long. I'm just going to read it. And once we get through these, then we're going to fuse these passages together and see how God brings us into the miracle. That when true miracles take place, there is some participation upon our part. Oh God, I can see I need to raise the dead today. When God fixed your heart to make amends with someone that's got on your nerve, God is not going to dial a number.
No, He's not.
But He'll put in your heart the words to say. When Israel got to the Red Sea, He opened the Red Sea, but He didn't blow them over with the wind. I did what you cannot do. Now take your feet and walk. And so I want to show us something positive. That God wants us to participate. Matter of fact, we must participate in the miracle in order to be blessed. Oh Lord. Let me find someone who looks like they're going to heaven. Okay, you have the job, but you're waiting for this next blessing with your credit score. God says, well, what you do is just keep working and keep paying your bills, and I'll bless you to raise the credit score. But you can't lay in bed all day and think I'm going to perform a miracle if you don't go out there and work. Are you following what I'm saying? Now Matthew 11, 28 through 30, and then John 2 through 11. We're going to stay in the Gospels. Luke 8, verse 52 through verse 56. That's Luke 8, verse number 52 through verse 56. And then John chapter 5, verse number 6 through verse number 8. When you look at John, when we go to John chapter 2, you see Jesus turning water into wine. And basically, He gives a commandment to fill them. When we get to Luke chapter number 8, you're going to find that Jesus raised the daughter of a man named Jairus. And he told them after he raised her to feed her. Now, water to wine, he says, fill them. Jairus' daughter, he says, feed her. When we get to John chapter 5, you're going to find a man who was sitting by a certain water, a certain pool, that at a certain time the angel troubled the water. The first who got in were made whole. Well, this man gave up excuses why he couldn't get in. He said, every time I try, somebody get in my way. But Jesus told him, you're going to read, take up your bed and walk. So for him, we want to just write down, find yourself. You got to find yourself. You got to stop letting people. Can we just talk today? I have my spirit. I'm trying to build up. But turning water to wine, he says, fill them. Jairus' daughter, he says, now feed her. But the sick man, basically, you need to find yourself. You see, you got to stop letting people get in your way and use that as the excuse why the miracle has not taken place. Talk to me, please. Talk to me, please. When you find yourself, then you discover the power of God. Because you can say, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. Does that make sense to anyone? All right, now I want you quickly to, now what I'm going to do is read Matthew 11, verse 28 and 30. And I'm going to close with a very powerful illustration after we read those three scriptures. Somebody say, handle it. Handle it. Yeah, God didn't just let you go and say, deal with it. He says, handle it. You know, you working in an office somewhere, you FBI agent or you some engineer or whatever you do, when the boss walks in and say, listen, we got an issue, I want you to handle it. That's good, because what he's saying is, I know you can get the job done. Say amen. Saying things like, well, deal with it, it doesn't sound too attractive, because what you're doing is you're just telling me it's all your problem. You just go ahead and deal with it and go on. But Jesus is not saying just deal with it. He says, I want you to handle it. And handling means that I know what you're able to do through me. Does that make sense? We got a situation, but I want you to handle it. So in Matthew's Gospel, chapter number 11 and verse number 28, the Bible says, he says, come unto me all. Someone say all. That labor and are heavy laden. That's a universal truth. Doesn't matter where you live in this world. Come unto me all that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke, someone say yoke, upon you and learn of me, for I am meek. Is that in your Bible? Yes. And I am lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. Get this, for my yoke, that thing that binds us together, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And I want you to remember that scripture. I'm going to close in just a few minutes on that scripture through an illustration. Now, go to John's Gospel, chapter number 2. John's Gospel, chapter number 2. And we will look at verse number 2 through verse number 11. It's John's Gospel, chapter number 2, verse number 2 through 11. The Bible says, and both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said unto him, they have no wine. Jesus said unto her, woman, what have I to do with thee? My hour is not come. His mother said unto the servants, whatsoever he said unto you, do it. I need to pause right there, and I might get some hate mail again, I'm not sure. But I love you. To my Catholic friends, the only commandment that Mary ever gave is whatsoever he said. Do it. And I'm not being sarcastic. I want to help people who are laboring under a lot of false doctrine and laboring, trying to make it to Jesus. He says, it's not that hard if you just trust in me. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. And so to my Catholic friends, in love, Mary has no position in heaven. Mary has no authority in the Lord's church. Yes, she was a woman who was a virgin who gave birth. But the only commandment you ever hear her say is that whatsoever he said. Amen. All right. Whatsoever he says, do it. And then he says in verse, and it's interesting too, because see, when she kind of got on his nerve, asking for something that she didn't know what she was really asking for, he called her woman. Now, my mother, bless her heart, she called me this morning and she, son, give everybody my love, give Liberty my love, and can't wait to see you all. And I said, yes, ma'am. I can't build myself to call her woman. Now, my father may have said that, God bless the dead. He may have said that in his lifetime, you know, all those years of marriage. I'm sure he stood in the kitchen frying fish saying, woman, I told you to get the, you know. I mean, but for a son, there's no way in the world I can still just look at her and say, woman. But what Jesus was doing is he was trying to teach Mary that even you have to be subject unto me. Y'all not saying anything. You need to say amen. Mary does not have authority in the Lord's church. They're not being dogmatic. And I respect all men. I love all men and women. But there's still a time you got to just tell the truth. And the truth is that Mary does not have authority. And this is the only commandment in the scriptures where she says whatsoever, of course, he said, do it. Now, that point is made. Verse number 6. He says, and there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. And Jesus said unto them, get this, fill the water pots with water. And they would fill them up to the brim. And he said unto them, draw out now, and bear unto the governor of the feast. And they begged. And when the ruler of the feast, my Bible is so used that I can't, but I got words crossing left and right. Don't laugh at my little raggedy Bible. I love this Bible. And I got 100 Bibles at the house, brand new, but I just love this little raggedy Bible. And so if I ponder, just give me a moment. But he says in verse number 9, when the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew, the governor of the feast called the bridegroom and said unto him, every man at the beginning doth set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse, thou hast, he says, worse, but thou hast kept the good wine unto now. So here's the thing. They ran out of wine. And so Jesus says, now I need you to do something. I want you to take what you have and take that water and fill it to the brim. Amen. And when they did that, of course, the water became wine. So here you have a miracle taking place, but the Lord is drawing you into the miracle by having you to do something. Look at Luke's Gospel, chapter number 8. We're almost finished, believe it or not. I just want to read these things and put them all together. Luke chapter number 8. Luke chapter number 8, and then we will look at verse number 52. Luke 8, 8 and verse number 52. The Bible says, actually let's look at verse number 51. And when he came into the house, he suffered no man to go in, save Peter and James and John. Turn to someone and say, everybody can go. Everybody can go. And the father and the mother of the maiden, and all wept. Again, I want you to watch this. And all wept and bewailed her. But he says, weep not. She is not dead, but sleeping. And they laughed him to scorn, knowing that she was dead. Now look this way before we read the rest of this. He says to them, weep not. And you would think that when he said that, they would have stopped crying. That's right. And then he says she is not dead. So they turned the crying into scorn. You got to be crazy. You've lost your mind. But watch what happens. Watch what happens in the next verse. In verse 53, and they laughed him to scorn, knowing that she was dead. And he put them all out. Amen. That's what you got to do sometimes to folk that don't get it. Just get them out the room. And he put them all out and took her by the hand and called, saying, Maid, arise. And her spirit came again, and she arose straightway. And he commanded to give her meat. In other words, feed her. The first miracle we looked at, he said, I want you to feel that. The second miracle, he says, now, I've raised her. Now feed her. Oh my God. I want to go a little deeper. I was trying to just do this real quick, but y'all trust, you test me every Sunday. Is it possible that God won't raise some of your children because you don't know how to feed them? Amen. Amen. Every time the Lord raised the dead, he turned that person over to a relationship that existed before they died. When Lazarus came back from the grave, the commandment was loose him. I'm not doing that. Take the bandages off him, lest he suffocate and die again. He raised the dead of this man's little daughter. He says, now, I've done that, but give her something to eat. And is it possible that as parents, as we go through struggles with our children, with our nieces, our nephews, our sons, our daughter, is it possible that they'll just stay spiritually dead? Yes. Until such time you learn how to feed them properly? Oh man, I need a vacation. Y'all about to run me crazy. Why should I bring something back and you don't have the love to nourish them? I don't have to, I'm not ashamed. I'm very transparent. Sometimes too transparent. People talk about, I wouldn't have said that, but that's, you're not me. And let me tell you something. When years ago, when I walked away from the faith and was doing my thing, that almost set my father and mother to an early grave. But I'm going to tell you something. When he resurrected me and came back to my first love, my father kept his love and my mother kept her love. and they were able to feed me with love, which caused me to be sustained. Now, the worst thing that can happen is God brings something back to people who can't stand them in the first place. They'll be better off dead. I didn't plan to go there, but you all looking like you're watching a movie on your phone. It's the truth. Why bring the daughter back when mama gonna cuss her out? Why bring the son back when daddy got no time for him and all you're gonna do is drink and cuss him out? They're better off in the grave than for me to bring them back. If I bring them back, your charge is to feed them. Let's go to one more. John chapter number 5. I'm almost finished. John chapter number 5. We're talking about this thing between miracles and responsibility. John chapter number 5. Are you getting anything out of this? Yes. John chapter 5 and verse number 6. John 5 and verse number 6. The Bible says, when Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he said unto him, wilt thou be made whole? The impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool. But while I am coming, another steppeth down before me. Jesus said unto him, simply rise and take up thy bed and walk. And immediately the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked. On the same day was the Sabbath. Look at your neighbor and say, find yourself. Quit blaming people for your problems. Stop complaining about who got in front of you, who done took your money, who done took your heart. Skip all of that. What deliverance is this: he never got rid of the bed. He just told the man to get up and get your strength back and then take the thing that you were dependent upon and carry it. That's what deliverance is. Deliverance is when you struggle with alcohol, but the liquor store doesn't go anywhere. But he allows you to pass the liquor store because that doesn't call you the way it used to be. You're able to pick it up and you carry it. It's not that you're tempted. It's not that you don't have an urge, but he's not bound to where you used to be bound. He does not get rid of the drug dealer. He does not get rid of the drugs, but he'll get rid of what's in your spirit. So when the drug man comes by, you say, I got to worry, no, I'm good. Just have a good day, go about your business. That's deliverance. Some people want folk to disappear. God says, I'm not going to make them disappear. I'm going to give you power to deal with the person when they see them. I wish I had some witnesses here. Somebody say, first of all, you got to feel them. You got to feed them. And then you got to find yourself. The list goes on. We're not going to go to these scriptures now as I'm about to close. But the list goes on. And when you look at the story of the fish and the loaves, somebody had to give up their lunch in order for other people to be blessed. You remember that they were told to go out into the deep. They said, Master, we toiled all night and we didn't catch anything at all. Well, he told them, what you need to do is follow my orders. Go back out there, even though you failed tonight. Go back out there in the deep water and cast your nets again. In other words, I will get the fish for you. But you're going to take the boat out there and catch the fish. Oh, we can go deeper than that. Peter went to the lakefront according to Matthew chapter 17. And it was Jesus who told Peter, he said, listen, go down to the lake. And the first fish. Now you know that's power. Oh, where's my church? Where's my church? Where's my church? I need to, I need a vacation soon. Y'all go to the lake. Now you know you got power with all the fish in the sea. And he says, now you go down there to the lakefront. That's in Matthew 17. And I want you, the first fish that you catch, I want you to open his mouth. There's going to be a coin inside. Take the coin out of his mouth and go pay the taxes for you and for myself. Y'all know me. You know that's power. with all the fish in the sea, that he commanded one to have a coin just in his mouth at the right time, at the right place. This is why you can't be skipping church because you're going through something. You may miss your miracle. Talk to me, please. You gotta come saying, Lord, I got some issues going on, but there's some things I need you to speak to my heart. We serve a God that's so powerful, he's already talked to your new boss and you haven't even met yet. We serve a God that the job is already open for you. You just haven't seen it yet. He goes before us and he handles things. All he wants us to do is join him. Amen. 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 Join him. Amen. Stay in alignment. I can stay in this Bible all day from the beginning of Genesis to the end of Revelations. Every time he performs a miracle, it includes your participation. Now, I want to close with something that blew my mind. Last week I was absent, of course, and I was preaching the gospel. And normally, when I get ready to go back, they just drop you off. They say things like, Doc, that was a great meeting, that was a great conference, and they just drop you off, you hug them, and you go check in. Well, my covenant brother, minister, whose name I won't call, but been knowing him for over 30 years, and he drove up and I said, man, he said, no, I want to go in. And I want to sit with you until it's time for you to get in line. Amen. I said, good. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. He's pulling, it's 5 a.m. I'm not an early type person. You know, I like to, you know, I don't sleep that well sometimes. I like to get my ready. 5 o'clock in the morning. He was there on time at the airport, and he said, no, I'm going to help you with the bags, and we'll park the car, and then I'm going to go as far as I can go. And we're going to sit down and talk and reminisce until it's time for you to get in line. So that's my covenant brother, the preacher, and pastor, a great man of God. And so we're sitting down, and as we're sitting down, the line of people are just coming back and forth, just back and forth. People are coming in and they get ready to check their bags and everything. But we were sitting in a place where he could still sit. Jesus, when he says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light, God gave us a lesson that blew our minds. And you're talking about iron sharpening iron. Amen. Because we saw, what I'm about to tell you, this is true, it happened last week. What we saw blew our minds. And God was giving us revelation at the same time. What I saw, he didn't see. What he saw, I didn't see, but we blended. This is what happened. We're sitting there, and this police officer is walking this dog. He wasn't a German Shepherd. I don't know what kind of dog he was, but he looked like one of those country dogs you just want to pet and be at home. He don't want no problems or issues. He had a little tag around him that says, do not pet. And he, of course, he's there to sniff, to see if, you know, you got something going on. So the officer walked past me and my partner, and he and I were talking face to face about ministry. We saw the officer and his dog walk by, and he stopped about 5 feet from us. As we're talking, we heard this rah, 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 rah. And you know, inside of the airport, it echoes. So we kind of jumped and looked, thinking it was the officer's dog. There was an owner that had a dog and saw the police dog and started barking. As God, as my living judge, the dog, the officer's dog, looked at him, looked up at the officer, and just said, doubtful. And he just sat down, turned his head, and the dog kept barking. God says, watch this. That's the owner. But this dog is with the master.
Yeah.
That dog is not trained. This dog is trained. You see, you barking, but I'm at work. I'm sniffing and looking and ignoring you at the same time. Y'all not getting it. God told me something. He says, your bark means nothing.
That's right.
If I bark, somebody's going to jail. This is true. I'm not making this up. The officer left the dog with a command. He did something with his hand, and the dog just sat there. And then he laid down, but his head was up watching the people go by. The line was getting long. And the officer went about 15 feet telling people to go in this direction because it was getting thick. The dog didn't move at all. And the other dog is still barking. And the owner is trying to get him to hush. And that dog has peace because he's with the master. He has been trained. God told me to tell somebody, let them bark. Because they bark don't mean nothing. But when you bark, somebody's in trouble. Because I come with my voice, and my master has control of my spirit. Now, if a dog can be trained to shut up and turn his head from a fool, you know you ought to go to your job tomorrow and let people bark and say, I'm praying for you. And keep on doing what you're doing. Because you're wasting your time barking at me. But here's the part I love. I'm not making this up. I'm not going to say his name, but if somebody tests me, I'll give you, you can call down there. We were so mesmerized, man. In fact, I believe today, he's going to bring the same illustration in his sermon today, because we were both there at the same time watching this dog. Get this. When the officer went down to the end of that line, he left him there with his leash. He came back about 10 feet, looked at the dog. You would think the dog would have got up and just ran. The dog got up, took his mouth, went down and picked up the leash. In other words, that ain't your responsibility. It's mine. He went down. God is my living judge. He went down with his mouth, picked up the leash, but as he was running to the master, he was kind of fumbling because it was hard to do that, but he was saying it's not your responsibility. So he took up his little burden. He took up his little yoke. And as he picked it up and was running, stopped running, he got to the master, the officer, took the leash, lifted his head, and his master reached down and said, let's go. What Jesus is saying, why don't you learn to let other dogs bark? Keep your mind focused on me and know that you've been trained very well. And when I tell you to come, pick up the thing that's around your neck. I'm not picking that up. Run. Look up to me. Let me reach down and grab it, and we walk off together. Y'all understand that? Do you not know that's power? Do you not know if an animal is trained to do that? How in the world you and I just having all these problems and issues? Learn to quit barking, and when you bark, it's going to be for a real reason. Learn how to look at your master when other people are barking. Ignore what they're doing, and when he says come this way, don't expect him to come pull your little leash. Pick up your little burden, run to him, look up with your mouth so he can reach down and keep it moving. exactly what God wants you to do. I don't know who's here. I don't know who's here that has some issues, but your miracle is not going to come until you step into it. There's some things you're going to have to do because God's not going to do it. What you can't do, He will do it. What you can do, He expects it. When I saw that, I talked about that for the whole week. He would call me. We was going back and forth with different illustrations because it was so rich and it was so deep that I couldn't turn it loose. And I told her, I said, if I live, I'm going to bless that church with that. That's what the Lord is saying. He said, listen, listen, listen. Ignore them barking dogs. You got authority. I mean, just when we thought it was the officer's dog barking, it wasn't him. It was the one in line. Get this. I don't know where he was going. He could have been going to Paris, Hawaii, but he's barking. He's in line to take a vacation. The other one is there at work. And you would have died to see that dog look at him. Didn't say nothing, just looked at him. Turned, looked up, looked back down, and just laid down to the master's feet. And he was not bothered at all. If an animal can do that, what do you think, God? Pick up your leash. Pick up your cross and follow Him. When it starts to get heavy, take it like that little dog. You may stumble a few times, but when you get to the master's hand, just look up. And the master says, I'm so thankful that you didn't give up. And I'm thankful that you have the strength because you were trained to pick that leash up. Bring it to me. I'll then take it and we'll walk together.